I got on an airplane one time and I was in like the 15th row back, and like the first 10 rows were like reserved for like first class seating or whatever. And it was a pretty long trip, and all of first class was like booked out, and the plane was, fairly full. And as we're kind of finishing the boarding process, like the last seat in first class, it's the very first seat, the very first aisle seat, this famous comedian walks onto the plane, and we all recognize him. His name's Dave. He had a show on Comedy Central a while back. He's really well known. And at this time, as like a college student back in the day, I'm looking at him going, no way. And I'm going, of course he's sitting in first class. That's so sweet that he's on our same plane. And, instinctively you go like, well, yeah, of course he's going to pay the extra money for the extra legroom and the extra all that stuff. And a part of you gets a little bit jealous of like, man, I wish I had that kind of money. I wish I had that kind of power to be able to do that. And as I'm kind of walking through this in my brain, the plane's kind of a buzz because everyone's kind of realized he's on the plane now. And someone that had been either wounded in combat, who was a soldier for our U.S. Army, walked on the plane. And as he walked on the plane, he saw this comedian, this famous actor and comedian, saw that this man had been wounded. And so he stopped him. He got up from his seat, he walked toward the back of the plane where we were, and he gave the guy his first class seat. I remember thinking to myself, I think I get it. I think why God gives us power, why God gives us resources, why God gives us energy. It's because we're expected to leverage those things to serve other people. That's what I want to talk about today. Here's what Jesus says in the book of Matthew, chapter 20. He says, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. He's talking to his followers. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be the first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, this is Jesus talking about himself in the third person, just as the Son of Man, just like Jesus didn't come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. If there was ever a character in all of literature and all of human history who had power to boot, he had power and energy and authority like no one's business. We watch his model, we watch what Jesus does with it, which isn't to simply lord it over people or to say, look how great I am. But Jesus is so strategic that at these certain times in his life, he takes all the power he's been given. This is what the book of Philippians talks about. This is what the book of John, chapter 13, talks about. It says, Jesus uses his power almost like a crowbar. He pushes down on it. He makes himself of lesser reputation. He weakens or he empties himself in order to serve other people. See, God doesn't give us power gratuitously for its own sake, just like he doesn't give us money gratuitously for its own sake. He gives it in order to be stewarded. And sometimes when we talk about stewarding, we know that when God gives us money or finances or whatever, he expects us to grow his kingdom with it, to serve and to give and to be generous. But did you know that he also expects us to do that with the power he's given to us? And we each have been, just like financially, we've been allotted a different means of power. My question I want to ask us is, are we leveraging the power that we've been giving to serve other people? I thought that on that day, Dave did a great job of saying, this is the power that I've been given. And I'm not sure he was doing it because of his religious convictions. I'm not quite sure where he stands spiritually. But I do know that spoke volumes that I'm sitting here now 12 years later thinking about that very interaction where someone who seemed to have all the power in the world, just like a crowbar, put their weight down on their power in order to lift somebody else up. This is what it means to serve in God's kingdom. Jesus shows us the model of what it means to take his infinite power was used to serve, and then he calls us to something so much less, but something very important. He says, I want you to take all the power you've been giving, much less than me, much less you could ever imagine compared to me. But are you using that to serve other people, or are you hoarding it, hoping that no one ever takes advantage of you because of the power that you have? When we hoard power, we look a lot like this world. But when we leverage our power to serve other people, we are being imitators of who God has called us to be. May we be people of power, but may we be people of power in order to leverage it to help those who are weaker, so that in him they can find strength. We'll see you tomorrow.